Very good.
Yeah, it's starting. Started again.
Very good.
Okay.
Da sieht man da die
Test. Did you test? Test. Bitte.
Mehr.
You do. Stop it. Okay. You do. Okay.
Dobro, zato što kažem da ne bude rano. To ovim mlada. Imaju energiju. Da, ne bi... A ne znam koliko Da.
Devo ti dare super cosa.
Da. A ne znam koliko mi recimo ovaj za ekran i ciklus ne vidi. Rekao 9.000 je original, a to je 180 €. Eto mi je koliko je onda. Da. Kao je 120. Slušaj, 117 i 122. Tako to je. Svako da. Io mi so di prima di baru a te? Non sto mi bar, posso dire che si non sta credendo. Esatto. Ja sam došla samo prošle vode na... A kako nema nema... Pa nema, samo odbili se. Sa strane su tako? Ali mislim sad još sam ne osjećam. Mora da ide. Da, možda to je Estamos aquí.
Kam policijo me prehvalati.
Mi je to.
I z dolnim petakonim i tako.
Nella favorevolina diceva sì che l'ho mio show Kamarda e-mail
Ja ti tudi abaš forward, da pa imaš
Po kjo qenë ka tamam për të thënë konferencë. Ja po që ta viti kjo konferencë për një gjuan politikë.
Oh yeah. Like Snow White. I have a favorite question for you. When you go announce to explain the new concept, can I ask you for a favor to tell people who want to visit Women's Museum that the sign-up sheet will be with the volunteers of the temple? Because we organize this small women's museum here behind Western Balkans Fund. It's amazing. I will. Thank you very much. Are you excited? We don't have our tables.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a good night's sleep and rest. We're about to start our first panel of this conference. My name is Dennis Laj. I am honored to be moderating this panel with all our distinguished guests, and I hope that we all get to learn some new things and reinforce some of the things we know and share this experience together. Before I go on, I'd like to point to everyone that the badges which contain a QR code could be scanned and you will get a detailed agenda of the conference, of all the speakers on each day, because what's printed in the back, it's a general overview of the conference. Details, you need to scan the QR code to get. So please do that if you need to know everything exactly. We are one of those types of people that need to know everything that way. Without further ado, I'd like to present and say a couple words of our distinguished guests this morning. First off to my left, Mrs. Etita Jonaj. She's an MP of the Albanian Parliament. She's also the member of the Integration Committee of the Parliament and former Minister of Justice of Albania. She oversaw many important legal initiatives aiming at empowering women in politics, economy, education, and the social sphere in general. Also, Mrs. Lisa Gashi is the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister of Kosovo. She was born and was living in Costa Rica, one of the most beautiful places in the world, when Kosovo declared independence. She studied at Arizona State University, and then before joining politics, she created German NGO to engage more than 800,000 Kosovars outside the country in the policy-making process, networking, job creation, and diplomacy. Also with us is Fatmire Saki. She is the current Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for North Macedonia, but also a successful woman who started her career in 2005 as a spokeswoman for the Democratic Party of the Albanians. She's the mother of 2 children and continues education. She is currently a PhD candidate from the Blaž Koneski Faculty of Psychology in Skopje, at the University of Skopje. Philology at the University of St. Cyril Methodist University in Skopje. Also, and I want to get this right, so I wrote in Albanian, we have Mrs. Maja Vavjik. She is from the IDF, and Maja has a long career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland. She can be able to expand on more topics of leadership and women's rights in Eastern Europe and the Western Balkans. Also, she can expand more on how the International Visegrad Fund has become one of the most important organizations in Eastern Europe, having been formed in 2000 to support with grants CSOs of the before EU candidacy at that time of Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. Also with us is Maja Rajcevic. She's the Executive Director of Women's Rights Center since 2012. Center for Women's Rights empowers women to fight for a better position in society and access to justice, offering them counseling, psychological, and legal assistance. And then at the end of this panel, we have Professor Gavin Patrick Gray. He's in the Developing the Communications program at the College of Policy Studies at the Tsuda University in Tokyo, Japan. Currently engaged in research supported by the Japanese government on violence against women and children in Japan. So we'll get a perspective from the other side of the world and how things are developing over there. Other areas of interest for the professor include international security, terrorism, and also propaganda. So, Etita, I would like to start with you. And as I mentioned before, you've been at the core of pushing forward legal changes that will empower women to partake in politics, partake in decision making, and be part of leadership in institutions, businesses, and organizations. What is the reasoning behind that strive to grant more access to women in power positions?
First of all, let me thank you for this invitation, and of course, even in the name of the Speaker of the Parliament, Madam Nicola, I want to give her greetings for organizing such event that when I saw the title Unstoppable, it was very impressive, because at the end of the day, this is our goal, to have unstoppable women in power and in politics. Of course, that being a woman in politics, it's very challenging. It's not said just only by me or by being a politician. It is said by all the women that are involved. And I've been worked and contributed for civil society for 12 years. And then for 3 years as deputy ombudsman in Albania. So I was totally out of the politics. And in the moment that I was invited to be first Deputy Minister of Justice and after that Minister of Justice, for me it was totally something that I hadn't thought about. In one way, we do politics in our daily life, despite that we are in civil society or in academia or in other fields, because we try to push with our efforts in order that the politics will change. And I was the first woman Minister of Justice in the history of Ministers of Justice in Albania. And this was the first challenge, because it was always, I've been always in such as a challenge that, there have been the men that have been Ministers of Justice, but now you are women, so you have to do something different in order that could be count. And sometimes we see this not just only in the higher positions in the government, but in all positions when women are taking leadership.
And actually, that was when justice reform was coming to life, so it wasn't an easy time to be Minister of Justice.
Second, I was the second report that everybody mentions always is that I had full term for 4 years as Minister of Justice, because in the past all the ministers have been in position for 2 years or 1 year and a half. So I've been the minister with longer life in that ministry. In a very difficult moment, in a very challenging moment, not just only for the Ministry of Justice, but for Albania. I've been charged for implementation of the justice reform when everything had started from scratch, when all the laws were approved, changing all the system, trying to build a new architecture, establishing new institutions with the new people, with the new laws. But what has had more importance, it was with the new mentality. So this was the first challenge that it was in front of me. In the end of 4 years mandate, I think that I succeeded. But of course not just only me. Because it's very important to mention that women, especially in leadership, always see their function, their mission in a team, as a team. So this is the reason why women always succeed on their challenging. Because they always consider themselves that are not working alone, or their success is just only by themselves, but it's about all the team that's working on that. So, second, it was really, I wanted to share with you, for the first time that we introduced one regime that is a special regime in the prisons. It wasn't in unimaginable that a woman could run prisons, despite that I've had in the civil society this experiences, trying to work with the prisoners and their rights. I've introduced for the first time some pieces of legislation for 41 special regime for the organized crime groups. And
So isolation for dangerous criminals.
exactly. It's called 41 piece. And it was very difficult. And when I've discussed with the former Minister of Justice of Italy that they have done for us, she told to me, and I went to Rome, and she told to me that, Ida, are you alone, or do you have some guards again coming with you in this event that we are going together? And I told her that me as Minister of Justice from Albania, I just have one guard, and it's normal because all the ministers have just only one guard. And she told me, yes, but you are implementing the justice reform with all enemies that are around, and second, you are implementing the 41 Bs, that is most difficult regime that we have had in Italy, and of course that in Albania is as dangerous as evil. And some of the colleagues that find out the special regime for the first time were just only trying to say that, yeah, but you are putting in the papers but not implementing for you. But I think that the results coming after that show very well how good results can women give in different positions when they are focused, and I think that it could be just done by women. And the third challenge, I wanted to go on, it was the fight against corruption. Of course, the fight against corruption it's a problem and an issue to all our countries, but it is true there is a link between women in power and less corruption. Because women are by nature, by the way how they feel and fulfill their mission, that is less corruption. Because they are more transparent, they are more focused on the goal, and in the end of the day, they are women will stay in the offices and not going around as men in bars trying to make connections and so on. So I think that these studies that show that more women in power, less corruption, is totally true. And despite of that, having a woman in the heads or in chairing the national coordinator of anti-corruption, it is a good thing, not just only because I've been there, but it takes seriously all the minor efforts in order that could have some results for fighting against corruption. And it's not an easy task to be in power. It's too difficult. It's with a lot of challenges. I've always thought that might be this is not what I want to do. With all the difficulties, or when I saw my boys at my child and being always like always very frightened what will happen with his mother, or without having this real care that a mother that is not so busy could give to her daughter. But I think that with our contribution, and why I have been in this position is that I want to contribute for my country, and I want to do something and to put some milestone in each field or in each idea that I work. And the same I'm doing even now as an MP. Of course, small steps, but it is important to be small steps. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Before we go on, I would like to give a short presentation for our other member of the panel, Ms. Violeta Jovanovic, who since the year 1998 has been building expertise in the field of local development as an expert and team leader on the USA programs in Serbia and the region, through designing, advocating, and implementing development projects worth over $10 million. As the first employee of NALED, in the position of executive director since 2007, she initiated the independence and construction of a membership organization that later grew into the largest public-private association focused on building an environment for business in Southeast Europe. Welcome, Mrs. Jovanovic. So we'll get back to our line of questions for Ms. Gashi, who, as we said before, from Costa Rica to Kosovo. You have a very interesting story, 10,000 miles away from Kosovo, and then you left all of that. It was basically all you knew, being born there, and then came to Kosovo, and you are now in a position of leadership. How would you describe this arch of your story? Let's go right now. Yeah. Cool.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Western Balkans Fund team for putting together this event and for bringing us to discuss about the future forward and share a bit of our stories. A disclaimer, I was not born in Costa Rica, but I was born in a beautiful town called Zidan, in the southeast of Kosovo. A town that one wouldn't skip as a tourist location, but would dive deep into understanding the rich culture and the hospitality of people. So I think for me, that's what connects. I used to have a neighbor, fortunately she passed away recently, but she was always a sort of a driving force of my neighborhood. The lady, her name called Nazia, who was 89-year-old and passed away last year, was in a way a connection being 10,000 miles away. I think it's important to talk about the journeys, but I think it's more important to talk about the people that we meet throughout the journeys. For me, throughout my journey of being in Costa Rica, Argentina, and the US, was always that sense of beauty that connected me to Kosovo, to its people, but most importantly, to its reality. My commitment to my country wasn't just by being a citizen of Kosovo. It was its rich cultural history and its tragic recent past. But it's also its potential to develop and to move it forward, to shape it a bit. And as I begin my journey as a high schooler, I happened to stop in Costa Rica because the post-war Kosovo also opened a lot of opportunities to reimagine the world in terms of how we see the future of our country. Throughout my journey of education, which I was lucky, but I wouldn't just say lucky, I was also a hard worker in the term of being lucky, to move forward in places of opportunities where I could develop skills that could later serve in life for where I am today. And so as I began my journey in Costa Rica, I realized the power of citizen diplomacy. I realized the power of stories. I happen to be in a very tropical country with very little connection to my country of origin, with very little reality actually. As I decided to move to Costa Rica for high school, a lot of what my surrounding was talking about that country was prejudice, stereotypes. All I knew was tequilas and good men. There was more to Costa Rica than tequilas and good men. There was a lot to develop and to gain from a country that first had no war in its history, has no army, but most importantly had a sense of community that was as strong as the community I was leaving behind, which was Kosovo. It was during my time in Costa Rica that I also realized the power of sharing, whether it be from conflicted areas, whether it be from two sides of the stories, and whether it be from two edges of the perspectives in terms of what we believe is right and wrong. Because there is a very thin line for people, especially in today's world with a lot of disinformation and a lot of drama going on a very short lifespan screen. People get to make contacts and make these contacts a reality and factual proof of statements that they belong to. And so I think here is where I felt I play a role. I shared the story of my country. I shared the reality of the newborn Kosovo. And Kosovo, also Costa Rica happened to be the first country to recognize Kosovo. I mean, I didn't do anything about it directly, let's just be honest, but my cousins and my close family thought that I was their ambassadors at the time. I was there and Kosovo happened to be recognized. duty is what we carry. Look, in my duty days of job, I'm not, luckily, the first one, nor the last one. I mean, in this room, I see former chief negotiator of Kosovo-Serbia dialogue, Ms. Elita Tahiri, former deputy minister, Ms. Sahatsiou, directors of multiple municipality directorate, members of civil society. So everybody has a piece of story, and everybody has some sense of duty and commitment to the story. The question is, how far can we go in terms of detaching from the day-to-day reality by living the moment yet contributing to the next moment to be created? And I think that's where I see my story fitting in and coming back. My biggest cause, and I continue to remain very tied to my cause, is connecting diaspora communities to their homeland, to their country of origin, because along the journey, I found multiple people who, in one way or another, living in between realities, have built so much commitment to their cause to give back. So the sense of community and unity, but it's also the sense of commitment of giving back in terms of making an impact. Sometimes your giving back, from your perspective, might be the best case scenario. But then when you come in to give back, you might end up in a stumbling block that some folks tell you, wait, what you're trying to do is completely crazy. But I think on this unstoppable theme, I'm back to Kosovo for now 5 years after my journey of education. I haven't left Kosovo because I wanted to just go abroad. I left Kosovo because I wanted to go on a journey to gain skills that could help me to be in a position where I could make an impact. I've always tried for impact, particularly this impact.
That was a goal.
It was something that was instilled in me throughout my journey, be it coming from my neighbor that just passed recently, or from the history of my people for struggle and for liberation that had brought me to a position where I need not just to work harder, but also to reflect on the past and to realize that it is our duty to make the place of origin a better place. It's not the duty of someone who hasn't been in that place to come and fix it for you. It's our duty. So that's why I think of Kosovo 10,000 miles away. And on today's work, I think of Kosovo be it 10,000, 15, because it's my daily job as well, in addition to being my pride, my commitment, and my duty to being a luxury citizen of a place that I call home.
Well, Isaki now. Discussion just mentioned that you are not alone. You're not the first. You're not the last women to lead. But still, some people ask that question as to how it is to be in government, a mother, in academia, a student of PhD as well. So how do you juggle and get all of this done at the same time?
Thank you, Benedict. So in the beginning, I'm honored to take part in this conference and to share some of experiences with other women and men and to find solutions to overcome barriers to success. When we talk about success and women in leading positions, it is still very, very important to talk about these issues, because even though there are some steps forward for women that we have in leading positions, but we have to achieve at least 50-50. But we think that we can do more. And this is the opportunity where we can talk about our experiences, to share with them, and also maybe we can learn from the experiences of other women who take part in this conference. So I started my studies and I finished with a very good grade, so I had scholarship, and I never thought that one day I'm going to be a woman in a leading position. But after that I started to train volleyball, and I played volleyball for 13 years, and I think that it helped me a lot, because sport helped women to work together in a team
without thinking of being leaders. But you start being a leader since you become greater sportswomen. And I had the chance to be a playmaker, and maybe that helped me to organize the play, and it helped me also in politics to work with other women. I'm in a leading position right now, but I've never wanted to be mentioned as deputy minister, and you have just to commend to other people so they can do they have to do certain job for you. But always I have been in the group with those women. In our ministry, we organized an international conference on women in foreign policy, and this year is going to be organized for the third time in a row. And we achieved to create a network of women diplomats of Western Balkans 6. And this is for the first time that we achieved all together to create a network, to share experiences and to learn from each other. And I think that we have motivated other countries, North Macedonia has motivated other countries to keep on with topics related to women issues. We also, as government, as the government of Republic of North Macedonia, we have a program for Sustainable Development Agenda 2030. We have strategy on gender equality 2021-2026. It has been adopted as comprehensive framework, which with activities for further promotion of gender equality in the status of women, as well as new law on gender equality. From a legislative point of view, the adoption of the law on protection and prevention of discrimination in 2020, as well as the law on protection from violence against women and domestic violence in January 2021, which is very, very important. So we thought that we don't have gender-based violence in our country, but during the COVID time, we saw that gender-based violence still exists. And also, that is a very important topic that we have to talk about. So, since we are considered as leaders, we have to talk about other issues as well, not just politics. This panel that I'm participating is named Rising Up the Science Between Lasting Leadership. And we ask ourselves, what does this mean? Is there a formula for lasting leadership? And what does it take to be a leader? It is said that true leader is someone who comprises strong, who is respected, has belief, passion, and compassion. But these are 4 key elements, but also women have these elements, so they can be strong leaders. We can add also for female that the voice of women, her intuition, the way of thinking, responsibility, politeness, and the sense of humor can also soften even the harshest part. So women are life motivators, they are givers, they give hope, they give chance in social, political, and economic life. As I said, I've played volleyball for 13 years professionally, and I used to be ambassador of my country without knowing that I'm ambassador of my country. And after that, when I came to diplomacy, I have told all the workers that we work together that I have been ambassador. So I'm very happy to represent my country, and also Albanian women, because I'm the only Albanian women in the government, and I have my duty is let's say double duty, because I represent female of North Macedonia and also Albanian female. And it is my duty is, let's say, harder than being just a woman. So I want to motivate other women, and I don't want to be seen just as leader, but I want to be seen as person who gives hand to other women and to take part in politics and in decision-making processes and to make the voices of those people who cannot be heard to be heard by ourselves.
It's very interesting. Thank you. In the Bible, God speaks about Him being the Alpha and the Omega, true leader, but also He's the first and the last. And women remind me of that they are leading, but they're also pushing forward other people. They are raising other people up, and what you said just reminds me of that. Here's another quote, not from the Bible this time, but this is something that I would pose to Mrs. Vavji. There is a quote that says, "It's the duty of every wise person to seek out people with potential and freely guide them on the path of wisdom. By doing so, the wise leaders of the future are born, and the world will have a chance to mend itself." By providing hundreds of grants every year, I could argue that the International Visegrad Fund is doing exactly that. It's creating future. I'd like you to talk to us about that, as to when you distribute this grants, this money, as to how you are also processing the thought of strengthening the leaders of the future through this donations.
Hello everybody, good morning, I'm very happy to be here. It's difficult to say something smart after speeches of such wonderful, powerful women. I'm a simple civil servant working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Colonies right now at the International Visegrad Fund. As I mentioned yesterday, there is a Visegrad group, political platform of collaboration of Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland and Slovakia. We are based in Bratislava, in Slovakia. And this Visegrad group, after 10 years of collaborating, decided to give birth to their child, and they founded Visegrad Fund. 4 countries, they contribute financially to the Visegrad Fund budget. And we as a secretariat, we are 18 people in Bratislava. We organize several calls during the budgetary year, and we distribute grants to organizations, to non-governmental organizations, to civil society organizations, and as well to individuals. We provide scholarships, and we are working right now on a fellowships program as well. I would say that our applicants, they are already kind of leaders, because the purpose of the Visegrad Fund was to know each other better. 20 years ago, 4 countries, we noticed that people from our region are always oriented naturally after communism to West. But in fact, we don't know each other so well. We have common past, we have a lot of cultural similarities, we have centuries of collaborations, but nowadays we don't know each other. And to have stronger voice in Europe, in global politics, it's better to collaborate and to speak together. So what is our goal is to put people from those 4 countries together, to let them organize different kind of projects from all possible fields, like culture, education, innovation, research, and to construct something together. As I mentioned yesterday, we are open as well to Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership. Our grants are also possible for applicants from those countries. And our grantees, they represent very often small organizations, very local ones, and they are local leaders. So giving them chance to finance their ideas in this way will develop leadership in the region.
Mrs. Radzic, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about your work. You have daily dealings with violence against women, cases of rape, abuse, domestic abuse, harassment. So you've seen some of the worst that can happen. But we've also seen stories of women that have been abused, but in that condition, they find the strength to rise up as true leaders that they probably might have not done in different situations. So this difficulty turns into an opportunity for them. So tell us a little bit more about the cases you see, and if you believe that there can be leaders found in shelters for women.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Yes, actually, yes, there were a lot of leaders in that shelter. None of them knew that they were leaders. Not even us who were just starting to deal with such a difficult topic as violence against women. I'm talking about the year 2000, 2001, when we didn't have the notion of leadership as such, nor such wonderful conferences where we could learn what actually leadership is. I would say that we just gathered ourselves in order to do something about violence against women. We knew it was the right address, but I would say that we were really overwhelmed with the testimonies of women we were hearing on a daily basis. So we were, of course, that was a sort of motivation for us, but those stories were really difficult. We were dealing with the women, even girls who were abused, who were victims of sex trafficking. Many of them only like 10, 12, coming from different countries, etc. But what we actually used from that experience, even though I have to say that that kind of experience is really not only give you some sort of indirect trauma that we were not aware of at the time, there also were extremely important learning experience for us, something that taught a lot about ourselves, but also taught us how little women need to keep going. So I would say that actually that is the question, or the answer to the question on motivation. So what actually we learned is that women need safety to actually achieve their full potential. And of course, that refers to all women, not only to those who are in the shelter. We all need to be safe to achieve our full potential, and also that safety doesn't mean only to be safe from physical harm, but also to be safe to stick to our choices when they are not typical, without being feared from hate speech, defamation, all kinds of silencing that we usually receive not only from the society but sometimes from the persons closest to us at a quite early age. So I would say that actually when you talk about safety, it seems so little, but actually it's huge. It's something that really means a lot, and I think that we should really talk about it more often, because we are facing the lack of safety, and that I could also refer to what Ms. Jona said, how important actually it is to feel safe. And it's not like women stick to being safe. They usually do all kinds of things even when they know that they're there. And that's actually where I see the true potential for leadership that probably every woman has, but maybe many of them doesn't know they have it. So I would say that not only safety, the shelter I worked for 10 years, not only gave women a roof under their head and that kind of physical safety, they also gave them the opportunity to talk about experiences without being judged, also to stick to their choices even when their family tradition is not allowing them to do so. And that was something that was really amazing. That was something for me personally like a huge revelation, where I really discovered that things can be truly different in our society. So that was something that I brought with me also in Women's Rights Center when it was established 10 years ago, where I worked with amazing women who are actually the team that is working together and that really share much more than just project goals and that kind of things. I would say that what is the specifics of our organization is that we actually tend to share, care about each other, to also share our emotions, not only activities and things that should be done. We also tend to contrast our opinions. We do stick to our decisions, but we think that our opinions should be flexible and we should be able to change. So, and what is also very important, and I would like to emphasize a lot, particularly because of my personal experience with working with traumatized women, is we also try to talk more about self-care. That is something that women are not taught very often, not from their families, not from the society. And I saw too many wonderful women that were actually burned out. So I would say that we really need to think about how we can also make ourselves resilient from all kind of pressures, experiences, etc. And that's why we also, of course, share the advices about self-care, let's say, and also try to share it with women who are coming to us. So I would say that actually we need to be aware that women should be able to stop sometimes in order to become unstoppable, and to just reflect on ourselves, think, is it something that I want to do, or I'm doing that because somebody else is expecting, or take care about also well-being and health and everything. So I would actually, if you ask me about the leadership style, I appreciate a lot. It's actually that empathetic leadership we saw from ex-Prime Minister of New Zealand, for example. And I think that women should be also able to share not only the ideas, institutional memory to each other, which is lacking, to be honest, because we have one huge piece of our history that is almost cancelled. And I'm talking, since I'm coming from Montenegro, that was Yugoslavia at the time, we had a huge experience of women who were organized in the anti-fascist movement, who were actually almost diminished from our history books. So the new generation doesn't know that they were existing and that they were so successful. They did so much for our society. So I think it's very important to share this institutional memory, to be enabling also to other women, and but also to not to be afraid to share emotions, fears, and also those not to be over controlling, but also to be stimulating for others, and to show a personal weakness sometimes, so that other women know that they don't have to be all of a sudden, they don't have to be perfect. Like there are many flaws that we all have as human beings, and I think it's very important that future leaders should be aware of that, and that they should be also able to perceive themselves as such, to learn from those mistakes and flaws, and to, as I said, become more happy, healthy, and resilient, and everything else I'm sure will come after that.
I love that. I say that it means necessary to stop sometimes in order to be unstoppable. Mr. Vernovich, I'd like you to maybe teach us a little bit as to what it takes to be a woman that starts at some, I won't say low, but it starts at some point in their career and then rises up to lead an association that's one of the largest in the continent. What are the qualities that are necessary in order to be able to do that and do that successfully?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and greetings, Tirana, to all present here. Greetings from Knowledge Outreach. I feel truly privileged to be a participant in the conference and to be on the ranks of such distinguished panelists. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to exchange with you all. I can start off by sharing an anecdote, which is also part of the response to your question, and it relates to how I got to be the executive director of Knowledge. So in 2007, I used to work for a USAID funded program that was based in Novi Sad, and it was coming to an end. And Novi Sad is the north of the country. As my contract was approaching to an end, I started looking for other jobs, and it happened then that another USAID program in Belgrade was looking for a person of my profile, and they interviewed me. I did so well in the interview, and they said, okay, you're hired. We'll start in about a month. And I took this time to start looking for a place in Belgrade to live and getting ready to move to the capital. Was all excited about it, and then comes the date of when I'm supposed to start, and they're just not returning my calls. And I pick up the phone and I call a person working there, Anna, a colleague of mine. I say, Anna, what's going on? Why are you not returning my call? And he says, oh, no one talked to you? Well, it happened that the donor removed this component from the program, so unfortunately this is not happening. But you know what? We have a position. We're actually advertising to find an executive director for a newly formed organization, and you can apply there. And I said, well, thank you. That's so comforting to know. And I said, well, what's the organization all about? And she says it's called Knowledge. And I said, oh, what a funny name for the organization. I can only imagine what this is all about. And I went to the website and I couldn't at all understand what this organization was supposed to do, and there were a lot of fun expressions to me at the time, like regulatory reform, decentralization. I had no clue about this. So I went to the interview, and I did very boring interview, frankly, because they asked me so many questions I had no clue about. And there was excellent competition there, and I got to be hired. So it's usually things happen unexpectedly, and it was actually the committee that was interviewing the candidates, and Anna being there, she knew me for a number of years. They selected me because they expected me to do well in this position. However, they did hire me for a month. So they said, you're going to be the executive director of the organization for a month, and then we'll see what happens next. And then I worked for a month, they extended it for another 3 months, and now it's been almost 17 years that I have been running the organization, and nowadays I feel very, very proud that we managed to build a very strong, visible, productive organization that is making a difference in Serbia, and I would say across the region. And we have been able to position ourselves as a key counterpart for the government of Serbia in implementing business environment reforms. And we have been either the initiator or the implementer of many of those alongside our government leaders. And our presence, apart from Serbia, also extended to the region of the entire Western Balkans, including Slovenia and Croatia. And that's another reason for making me so pleased to be here and to meet you all. But to go back to the question, so what it takes to grow an organization, it takes a lot of capable, determined, agile, self-reliant women. Because in this business of ours, which includes a lot of dialogue, negotiation, listening and hearing, and then translating this into messages that can be communicated well, it usually takes women, at least in the country where I come from. And initially, when the organization was small and unknown, and we didn't have much funding or support, we didn't really have a long line of candidates who wanted to join the organization and work for it. So this is when I again turned to some colleagues of mine who used to also work with me in USAID and other programs that agreed to join the organization. And we agreed to support each other in building it further. And say, a female-dominated team because women are like almost 70% of the organization. We are looking for male colleagues, but it happens so that most of the time it gets to be a female candidate. We are an agent that is recognized across the region, and I'm very pleased that we're also very actively working with colleagues and partners in Albania, a number of your institutions here and the government, local governments as well, and we're looking to grow this relationship, and we believe that women could be the bridge for reuniting the region, for reconciliation, for building bridges that can bring us back together, that can make us closer in understanding each other's perspective and working together to bring the region forward. And I would definitely put forward a hand of cooperation and trying to work together on this issue. And I believe in this conference room there are many women who are doing the same, and I would suggest that we join our forces in doing so. Just two other things I wanted to mention. One is women in leadership positions, especially in institutions and business. We see a rise in those positions in Serbia at least, and this is something we find very encouraging, to have women as ministers, mayors, prime ministers, governors of the national banks, and we think it's a great signal, especially to girls and young women that are just about to start their careers. What is lacking, though, at least in Serbia, in a large number of these situations, is women taking charge. So this is what we want to see happen, because oftentimes women, let's say, get installed by men into these positions, and then they feel indebted. They feel like they owe something to their sponsor, and that they should always put someone else forward. So we want women to speak for themselves. They're enough. They deserve those positions, and we expect them to take charge by putting together balanced public policies, especially gender balance. They will be inclusive of all marginalized groups in our societies, and giving more equal opportunities to men and women alike. And this is what we are vouching for, and we try to set an example by what we do. However, this process is slow, and I understand this to be a challenge across the region and the globe. And another thing also, and I'll close with this, is rural women that are very disadvantaged, at least in Serbia. This is also my pet peeve, because in my volunteer capacity, I'm the president of a national association called Etnomreža. It gathers women. There are usually such associations in each one of our countries. They gather artisans, women who are long-term unemployed, and they deal with handicrafts. And we do a lot in Serbia to improve their position and to help them in generating income and feeling good about what they do, because they're the guardians of our country's traditions. And one of the ways we are promoting their role is by using the items that they make as business and diplomatic gifts. So our government leaders frequently use these items as protocol, as cultural diplomacy in meeting their colleagues from other countries. And this is a very strong message that is sent by this gesture, especially to the women, because they know that what they are able to do matters. Not just for their families and for their own budgets, it matters for the country. And this is, again, another line of activity where I'd like us to connect. We have partners in some of the countries of the region, but we'd like to connect you all, and we're seeking partners in Albania for joint projects. So I'd be very happy if this gathering of ours results in many new connections, new partnerships, and us working together for the future of our region. Thank you so much.
Professor Gray, I would like you to, there was something you said this morning on the radio show that really struck me, and Ms. Jovanovic just mentioned it as well. A warning that you had against artificial positions of power for women, when they are put there by somebody else, or when it's just quotas that are good on paper, and you call for real change that would be on cultural and societal level. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can explain that a little bit. First of all, it's my great pleasure to be here. It's my first time in the Balkans, so it's a little bit difficult for me to talk about the situation in the countries in this area, but I can give some perspective on how Japan approaches these issues. Before I talk about my research that was for the topic you mentioned today, I should mention my university in Japan was founded by a woman called Suzume-ko, who 150 years ago, when Japan first opened up to the rest of the world, it sent out young people to bring back Western technology. And Suzume-ko was sent out when she was 7 years old to America, and she spent 12 years there before coming back. And after she came back, she saw the conditions for women when there was no access to academia. She established a women's university so that women will have those opportunities. But the gender norms at that time were so strict that Japan had very strong nationalism that focused people on serving the country. Their life was to be given to making Japan strong. One of the organizers here mentioned to me that he heard that in Japan you have a job for life. It's not really that, it's that in Japan your job is your life. When I meet people here, I would say, hello, my name is Gavin, I'm from Tsuda University. In Japan, I say, no, I'm Tsuda University's Gavin. The company comes first, that is your identity. And for men, the company is their life. It takes priority over family. And for women, raising children takes priority over their own interests. And those gender norms are changing, but they're changing slowly. And my research in Japan is looking at the situation, trying to find the bad points that exist, the differences that are being, how those problems are being met in other ways in other countries. And through that, I've also found that Japan actually does some good things. But talking about the bad points, just as an example, you might know sexual assault referral centers, SARS. In Japan, women have many rights by law and many support services. But because it's a very patriarchal society, these have been designed and implemented by men who don't understand what women really need. And so I've gone with young women and brought them to these places, and they're very scary. They're ominous, tall buildings with no decorations, concrete walls, guards on the gate that you have to sign in. And even I going there feel uncomfortable. So the young women going there feel almost traumatized again. In comparison to my own country, which is Ireland, we have a sexual assault referral centre called Aroa, and everything about it has been designed with survivors in mind. It's set off in a wooded area away from other buildings. The buildings are designed to be very natural looking and comfortable. It has 2 different entrances, so the first time you arrive you use the main entrance, but after that there's a side entrance, so people coming the second time won't be reminded of the first time, which might have had traumatic memories connected to it. But everything is done with women in mind, and women play a role in designing it. And in Japan, that needs to change. It needs to have more women in positions where these decisions are shaped for women's needs. But the good thing about Japan is that it's very good at taking in ideas from the outside, like it did in Sweden, or bringing back ideas. And Japan's difference maybe from European countries is that its primary target is social harmony. It knows everybody will disagree, but disagree in a way where people can work together and cooperate and have a level of social harmony. And it does this in many ways by not setting strict laws at the top level. So even in business, the Japanese management method is middle management. The bosses don't tell people you have to do this. They ask the middle managers, talk to your staff, talk to the people underneath you, find out what's necessary, come up with a plan, and then tell me. And if it's good, I'll give you the go-ahead. And in politics, it works the same way. They don't introduce strict quotas, but they introduce systems that ask groups within society to try and come up with solutions themselves, to try and get more people involved, more aspects of society. And they've done this in certain ways. Recently, they had gender equality law in politics a few years ago, and also a couple of years ago they revised their corporate governance laws. And both of them were to encourage political parties and businesses to take a more active role in building gender equality within their systems and displaying that to the public, so the public could see which political parties are being active, which businesses are being active. And you start to see this now today. When I woke up, I saw an article from Japan that Panasonic has introduced a new law where there will be no strikes policy for gender harassment. And in Japan, that's remarkable because gender harassment has long been a problem. But now they've said, no, we're not accepting it anymore. That's not just one change. That signifies that within that company, they've looked at this issue. They've had countless meetings about it. They've brought in trainers. They've talked about it. It represents the entire institution of Panasonic taking a new stance on gender equality. And that's what Japan tries to do. It doesn't try to force the issue and say, this is the rule, we have to follow it. They realize that by doing that, if people follow the rule, there will still be tension within society. Unless institutions change from within to adopt a better understanding of gender equality, a better understanding of men and women's relationships with each other, the laws themselves won't have any impact. You'll still have this tension, this animosity between the genders underneath the surface. And so Japan's focus is to try and create that harmony by getting more society involved on a deeper level to try and shift gender norms as a whole. Not to solve individual problems, but to look at the roots to try and make sure there are no problems in the future. And Japan is quite slow. People often criticize it for being slow to change. And that's because it likes to make deep change happen. It takes things slowly, it reviews them, and it tries to get all the society on board. And I think that's one of the positive things that we can take from the Japanese approach. And there's a saying in Japan that you don't win by defeating your enemy. You win when they stop being your enemy. And often, when I look at America and Europe, sometimes responses to gender issues are very combative. And there's a lot of tension on both sides. And you have to try and remove that animosity by interacting with people on the other side. Even if you find them distasteful, you have to find out where that anger comes from and deal with it. Because if it's just pushed aside, it will simmer underneath the surface. And without dealing with those problems, we can't really have gender equality, because gender equality isn't about just boosting up women. It's about making men have better relationships with women, making men understand them more. When Japan looks at gender norms in Japan, they do affect men just as much as they do women. And there's a survey done where they were asking Japanese men, what does it mean to be a man in Japan? What's most important? They could choose many different things. 80% of them choose being a breadwinner, supporting your family. That is the number one. 40% choose not showing any emotion, keeping it inside. Only 5% chose childcare. And children are important for Japanese men. The most important thing for me in my life. Japanese men care about them more, but they feel, I choose that, that's selfish. I have to push that aside to support my family. That's my role in society. And so I know a lot of them want to be able to talk more about their emotions, be more free with them, but they feel they can't. So lifting up women isn't just putting women forward, it's giving men more freedom as well to adopt, change the norms that affect them. So I think Japan's attitude of approaching this on a deep level, looking for social harmony, trying to bring people together, is something that is a positive thing.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'll come back again to Ms. Jonah over here. Being part of the media, I've had the chance to notice it and to witness it as to when women are in positions of power or positions of leadership, be that in parliament or the government or everywhere else, differently from men, they are often mentioned for their looks. Comments are made in passing about their age, about how they dress. So how do you deal with something like that? Have you noticed it in your own career, where instead of focusing on your job, your track record, what it is that you do and how you do it, the media, and because it really is substantial in forming the mindset, treats women as, or objectifies someone on their feminine side, looks and such?
It's very good.
And it doesn't happen to men that often. They don't, this handsome MP or whatever, but women, yeah.
It's true. I can just only mention the day that we have plenary, that in the outside of the building there are photographers, and they just only picture do pictures just only for women, and mostly they are commented in different online platforms.
What
Just
she
only
wore
what
today,
they
right?
wear, what she looks like, if she has wore a dress or something else. So it's always very bad looking when you see yourself or your colleagues just only mentioning or taking comments just only for the age and about how we look. And it's very, it's pity. I always say, not just only for the justice system, but even on the political life, even in our daily life. In the end of the day, it's mentality that we have to change. It's true that we are not used as society to see a lot of women in power. Despite that, Albania's situation is changed. We have more 70% women in the government as ministers. We have now 36% women MPs in parliament. We have now 9 mayors from 61 municipalities that are led by men mayors. We have around 50% of municipality councils that are composed by women. But before, just only 10 years before, the government has had just only 6% women ministers, 16% women MPs in the parliament. So it's a way, it's a path that we have to follow, and even to change the way how the society see the role of the women in politics. Not what she were or what she looks like, but what she do, what kind of contribution she can give to the politics, to the society. And of course that even when I've been in this position, sometimes I haven't been bothered in for real this kind of comments, but mostly I've been bothered from comments such as black propaganda, or considered black propaganda, or harassment, or comments that were without ethics, that sometimes damage a lot. Not just only the woman that has been attacked, but mostly all the hope and the desire of the other women to enter in the politics and to contribute in it.
Do you also think that women sometimes become special targets of this kind of black propaganda, as opposed to men, where lies are printed about them, lies are mentioned about them, because they are women, and they can be damaged in that way?
I don't want to be or to see just only vulnerability to the women, but it's true, because in the end of the day, women care about their integrity. Women care about their contribution in their life, despite what kind of position they have. They care about the family. So if I'm now in this position as even chairing the Women Alliance of members of the parliament, MPs, and imagine if we want, and we have as an objective to protect and to advocate for women's rights. And imagine what kind of damage is done if one of the women MPs is being touched or attacked to the integrity or to the family. So even in the way how the society see or the other women see, it's a big damage. And I think that it's not just only an attack to a woman that is in this position, but it's really all the women that want to do something for the society. And we know very well that the society is, especially politics, is stereotyped with a lot of hate speech, with a lot of sexism speech. And we have seen the plenary recently. And imagine what we can do to the women and to give to them our model or our example when we are sitting in the plenary and hearing any kind of hate speech and sexism that the other colleagues the men colleagues are doing to the women. Of course, that we want to fight together. Sometimes it happens that when one of the minister colleagues has been attacked in not appropriate way in the media, and somebody from the other colleagues has given to her a support, a public support, then the target has been the second one. And sometimes this is encouraging, not encouraging the women to protect and to be solidary with women. So I think that we have to fight in order that the media, the society, will see what kind of contribution we give for the society in the position that we have. In the end, we want to put a brick in the biggest wall of the things that we are trying to contribute in politics, in economy, in social life, in a health system. And of course that we have to do more of encouraging having more women in politics. It's true that the situation in Albania is like I presented the figures, but the figures count. And what counts is the strongest voice, not just only for empowering the women in politics, but even advocating and protecting the other women rights. Thank you.
I'd like to address Ms. Dashi. How is it to lead women and to be led by women?
I guess I want to begin by illustrating some facts about women's role in where we are. I mean, when you look Kosovo as a small, vivid democracy, I'd say a thriving democracy in the Balkans, and a great example of what it means to be able to be out there, be in position or opposition, and to count the voices of women. It's a country that on its 15th anniversary has 2 women presidents, the highest position in the country, has had a chance to have a woman deputy speaker of the assembly. In fact, we have a very strong woman who had 60 bullets during the Kosovo War and 40 family members killed, and got strength to regain back, to be in a position of power, to have multiple layers of identity, be attacked and present in public, and be able to move others, which is a testament of rising up, with women MPs who are not there just because of quotas. And I'm very proud of my people and my country, because while quotas are important in a society is deeply rooted by patriarchal norms, we've gone beyond quotas. There is yet a lot of work to be done in terms of aiding women to be able to simply spell out their feelings, their emotions, without feeling like they are going to be judged. It is out there a very negative image of looking for women MPs, not just how they dress and what they do, but always when some women have some sort of a different idea, they are there to be picked and sort of utilizing the woman to belittle not just the idea, but the whole process. And so, but when it comes to men bringing that idea forward, the discussion of the surrounding here, I think that has to be a bit more work of civil society and of kindness to raise awareness of what just Professor Gray said about allowing men to be more acceptable, because we're not just there for numbers. We're there because we add the contribution. And so I think working towards an equitable and inclusive society, it takes two to tango. And it takes, to begin with, in this room, having more men. Congratulations for the men that are there here to hear all these complaints and suggestions, but also the duty of us, men and women, is to bring this story forward and to share and to practice it and to be able to adapt it. But also we have to make sure that we understand the realities of the societies where we come from. Some ideas cannot just be imposed on a direct way just because we think this is right and just. It takes time for people to reshift their way of thinking. But more importantly, I think it takes experience. Look, I applaud my people and my country for the journey they've come because we've been isolated for so long, discriminated systematically for so long, yet we have built resiliency to still shine. And to me, that's the most important part of the community base, that despite patriarchal brutal implications, we still have moved forward. On the play of, I'm being led by women in my ministry. I am very lucky to have Deputy Prime Minister, Minister Gavala, to lead the way. Not just because of her being a minister, but her activism, her story, her background adds a lot of layers of me as a young policymaker in a position to learn and to be open, to reflect and to be attentive. And I see, along with her, but also other women, be it MPs from multiple parties, be it a woman in agencies, directorates, local municipalities, I see similar barriers and biases in our journey. Barriers, be it, I've come to be very happy on countering sexism, countering ageism, and countering biases, but not on a confrontal way of telling the other that, look, you're wrong, but on a very smooth way of bringing them to the picture to realize that you realize what you said. I've had ambassadors who told me once, one ambassador particularly said, look, wow, Deputy Minister, you're so young, you could be my daughter. For a moment, I just sat back and thought, holy moly, how is possible? But then I contextualized the reality of that ambassador. I said, you're right, ambassador, I could have been your daughter, but I happen to be your boss. So how can I help you? So I think it's very important to share the conversation, because if I was very much of, hey, this is not how it goes, you go, because you can do that extremely.
Yeah, sure.
I also think there is a mere importance on the dialogue. Be it a dialogue on ethnic lines, be it dialogue on layer of identities, be it dialogue on realities. The dialogue piece needs to be there, but it also, you cannot have a dialogue if you dismiss the other voices. And often, here's where a lot of women that I've worked with and I've seen on the journey often go wrong. I think trying to be the only vagina in the room, it's a problematic issue that we have. And that is a problem particularly on our region, because in our region, being the only woman in the room adds a lot of power. There's 5 men and 1 woman, and it's all, I'm the first. But the balance, because often when 2 women are in the room, the chances of the woman idea moving forward is 99.9%. But if you're the only woman in the room, your idea could easily be shut without you even noticing that they shut you down. So your job and our job is to make sure we are not the only woman in the room, because we need a friend in the room. So that's my part.
Girlfriends. Yeah. Okay.
So how do you feel?
I did great. Mrs. Saki, you mentioned your sports experience before, 13 years of volleyball, and how that, and I'm connecting this to what Ignacio just said, that you have these teammates, and they are your family, they are your fighting tribe, if I may call it so, and then you raise each other up. You are leaders all at the same time. what message would you give? It's obvious that we need more women in positions of power, be that in our communities, in our governments, in our sports, wherever. What message would you give to younger women as to how they find their voice, their calling, their strength, and then grab those positions and lead?
First of all, I would like to say that they have to work hard, to stand in themselves, and to be strong, to say what they have to say. Don't be afraid, so say what you have to say. Take your seat. If there is a seat on the table, there is no seat for you. You bring your chairs. So make your space, and also I always say we have to think of other female as well, not just ourselves, but we have to give hand to other female to bring them and to shine. So when we shine together, we give more light to the others. And don't be afraid to say what you have to say. This will be my saying.
Excellent, thank you. Going back, Ms. Babji, going back to the history of your organization, the IVF, International Visegrad Fund. It was formed to assist the EU candidacy of your country, Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. But since then, it has grown into one of the most influential organizers in Eastern Europe, with a special focus on Ukraine now and the Western Balkans and the Caucasian region as well. Can we have your perspective in what unites and divides the countries of this region? I mean, there's a war going on over there in Ukraine. That is a special situation, but there's a lot of commonalities, historic and otherwise, cultural and otherwise in our countries. What would be your perspective of that?
It's a very difficult question, politically delicate. It's, as I said, it's 20 years old organization. During these 20 years, we had different governments in those countries. And it happens that ruling parties in the four countries, they have different visions of regime, of as well social issues. So we cannot speak in the Visegrad region about one line. We are not small European Union. We don't have common legislation. All countries there governed as the chosen parties see the future of those countries. As I said, as the Visegrad Fund, we are focused on very local level of collaboration, and our scope is to bring people together and exchange their experiences, opinions, and to build something together. Albanian Minister of Foreign Affairs mentioned yesterday evening that there were no women in the Albanian politics during communist time. We had a very similar situation in Visegrad countries. In theory, there was emancipation. Women were equal, and we had, on paper, equal rights. I was shocked, for example, when I studied and I discovered that in France, only in 52, women didn't need anymore husband's allowance to work. Till 52, they needed to have a paper from their husbands that they can go work somewhere. In Poland, it was already impossible to
Sounds like children going to school with their parents come. Yeah.
Exactly. So in this sphere it was emancipation, but in practice, women worked in less paid, on less paid positions, and they have never been bosses. We had some MPs in the parliament, but they are like just to say we have women there, and we don't have we haven't had any important female persons on high positions. We are in the Visegrad region in the process of changing. I'm coming from Gdańsk on the north of Poland, and Sweden is just above. It's just 40 minutes flight. So for my part of Poland, Sweden was in these terms of point of reference and a model to follow. So we are, as a Visegrad region, on our path. After the fall of communism, what was as well interesting that among opposition, we had very strong opposition against communism. There were a lot of women very engaged in fighting against communism. But when the change came, again, all positions were taken by men, and those women stayed on local level, just supporting male figures. I would like to refer to what has been said personally as a woman, based on my experience. Speaking about having more women on influential positions, we have to work from the very low familial level on our society. And it's our role as women to grow up our sons in spirit of respect for women. As mothers, we should ask our sons to clean after dinner, as we do in case of our daughters. And without this very background level, we will not educate men. I'm very agree with this opinion that emancipation is not only about women, it's as well about men, to let them have emotions and to grow up them in the spirit of respect for women. I see leadership in two dimensions, psychological one and sociological one. Psychological one is this something that we have sometimes, and then we have this leadership spirit. We cannot say that everybody has it. We have individuals having those capacities, but very often these capacities cannot be developed because society kills from the very beginning this kind of attitude. If the small girl in the first grade hears that she's not enough skilled because she's a girl, that the most important thing in her life is to find a husband, that she needs to marry the first boyfriend she meets, then we will not create conditions to have independent, powerful women on high positions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just might just add a couple of things. I think that we have many great women in the Balkans, since they are in the Balkans, and I think being that our countries are relatively small, we need to share those examples of leadership across our countries. So if a woman is a leader in Serbia, we need to know about her here as well, and vice versa, everywhere in the Balkans. So, Ms. Streiswitz, and I will continue this line, and because your line of work also makes you closer to these issues. How do we make sure that we end violence and injustice towards women? I know it sounds almost unachievable because we've been talking about it so long, but I want to believe that this is possible.
Definitely not an easy question, but I think that a lot of answers we already get from our colleagues here talking about gender roles, and I was quite surprised to see that gender roles in Japan are quite similar to gender roles in Western Balkans. So I guess the patriarchy is something that is universal, and I think that we should actually change the way we perceive people, the role of women and men in the society, but also we should also change our attitude to power. I would say that, at least I can talk about this region, power is something that is overappreciated. Power is something that many people are streaming for. Not only men, but women, of course. And I think that we should change that attitude. And again, I will return to what I previously said. We should be more empathetic and think more about other people, but also strive to fulfill our own interests and hopes and potentials. So there is a huge work, of course, and we need to change the whole educational system. That is particularly important for changing our reality. And I would say that our educational system is very traditional. Not to mention that mostly women work in education because it's usually lower paid job, etc. But at the same time, we have our curricula that are not acknowledging women's contribution to the history. So once I opened the history book on my son, and I could see that women were mentioned only 3 times. Once in some commercial, all from the previous century. Another picture was illustrating women from the national movement from the Second World War, and the third one was also a woman without a name from some village carrying a huge burden on her back. So I think that these kind of images that are actually very often overwhelmed our children and ourselves can create false perspective of what women are capable of doing. And not to mention, of course, the new trends that are again different in a way that they actually strive for perfection of women.
Yeah.
Not only physical one, but also the one that women needs to be capable of everything. To have a successful career, to have a family, to be a mother even if she's not prone to do something like that. And it's really too much. We should be aware that we need to choose what's best for ourselves and not to just adapt for what the society needs. And it's not easy. It's much easier, of course, to say that and take lectures about it, but to change ourselves. And I think one of the great ways is actually to try to read in ourselves what is important for us and to stick to that, and also to try to be as much as brilliant as we can to the influences that are actually putting women into the private sphere and giving her some not only negative but also some hopefully positive characteristics, like women is caring, empathic, thinking about others. Not all women are the same, not all men are the same. There are empathic men and empathic women. We should acknowledge our differences and, of course, try to create a better society.
Thank you. A few years ago, we conducted a social experiment, which we filmed, and we had many people come to this, and they were young and old, and men and women, and I would describe them a successful business person. And then I would ask them to say how they pictured this person. Or it would be a sports person. And every time they described back to be men. He has a mustache, he's big, and he's tall, whatever. I was always talking about women, about specific women that live amongst us. And I hope that has changed. That was probably 6-7 years ago. But there is this image that's ingrained in the minds of children, that people of success, people of power, people of decision making, and they come up with a person who's usually male. And I'm hoping that this is something that will change. And I want to bring this to you, Mrs. Ivanovic. How do we make sure that changes? You've worked with a woman who's now Prime Minister of Serbia, Mrs. Markovic, and being yourself a leader also. What does it take to lead? What does it take to break these barriers, these perceptions as well? Is there, I know this is more than one question at once, but is there more than one way to get to the top? Or does each of us have their own style of reaching there without being power thirsty? as was just mentioned before.
Well, I can only agree with all that was said in the panel and with my great colleagues and peers here. And just to single out a few concluding messages. So, when it comes to leadership, for me, it's about growth that happens when you support others. And this is growth that happens in an organization, in a country, or in a person. And I experienced all of this firsthand with knowledge, and this is what I'm gladly sharing with others, hoping that it can inspire others to follow. And in doing so, one of the usual obstacles is when someone is different on in any way, be it their sex, if they are a minority, it's usually women in leadership, or their orientation, or religion, or any other kind of difference, because it usually invites bias and frequently labeling. And some of this was also mentioned in the panel. This is something that we frequently see even nowadays, because women are expected to be to assume a lot of roles and to be successful, equally successful in each one of those. And if they're only successful in business, then they're usually criticized for not being mothers, or not being married, for example. And this is the labeling that we try to fight against, because usually people who make such comments, they have no clue what they're talking about, because they don't know the reasons why the status of these people is such. And I also encountered those on many occasions. So I believe that we all in this conference room agree that this kind of labeling should stop, because it's really disheartening and discouraging for many younger girls who are starting their careers and trying to be at their best, and understanding that they're enough if they behave well, if they treat others nicely. They don't have to serve. They don't have to serve to deserve love. And this is usually the upbringing method that we still adhere to in our countries, and also in the educational system. And this is something that we are trying to change. One of the ways to change it is by giving a different example, and also building communities of practice. This is what works well in our experience, and this is what we're promoting left and right, because at least in Serbia, there is a small number of organizations, professional associations that gather women. It's usually a male advantage still, and it also has other reasons why women usually have little time or cannot make it to build a family and a career and hang out together. But this is something that could really make a difference, because this kind of mutual support is what also brings out new leaders, or at least brings them to life. And this is again another opportunity for us to build such a community of the participants of the conference, and try to encourage some new leaders that are probably emerging in this room and in each one of our countries. So thank you once again for inviting me. I'm really privileged to be on your events, and I'm looking forward to meeting each and every one of you.
Thank you. Professor Grady, in your paper, The New Orientalism, the Influence of Media Representation of the Other in International Affairs, you write, and I'm quoting here, the concept of Orientalism refers to the distorted manner in which Eastern people and cultures are often viewed by the West. Despite long awareness of this tendency, it persists in modern media. Now, this would be true of many Eastern countries. It's also true about Balkans. I just heard the other day that Balkanization of an issue is something that they use oftentimes in the United States nowadays, and it's not a good way to be exemplified. But my question is, do we have our own fault for that? And how do compare leadership skills between countries in the Balkans and countries in the West?
That's kind of a shift away from the past topics. However, the connection between them is that it's the same drivers. Often when you look at international relations, it's meant to be something. When you look at great power politics, we talk about real politics, it's politics without morality, it's just what's good for the country. And politics at that level is ideally supposed to be done without emotion either, but we're all human. And we have a tendency to demonize people who are on the opposite side. And the problem with that, even now when we look at the Ukraine war, the politicians on both sides are playing a political game, but they and the media, they drive up emotion to build up the support. And the danger of doing this is that when you build up that emotion, it's very difficult to put that genie back in the bottle. And using emotion, negative emotion against others as a tool, it's ultimately harmful to yourself as well. And so part of that, trying to deal with these problems of Orientalism and other things, is building up a proper open emotional communication with the people on the other side. The people that you disagree with are the ones that you most importantly need to communicate with. So I don't know if that answers that. Yeah, I don't want to go too deeply into that topic because it's slightly removed from what we were discussing before.
Could you give me your, I know that you've taken some notes as you hear speakers here, something that strikes you and that comes to your mind after this discussion?
So somebody was mentioning the importance of mentoring for young women, that when we look at women in organizations, we have to remember that they deal with promotion and advancement in a different way than men do. They can't look at them going on the same track. For men, the financial reward is what they've been raised to look for the hunt and big money. And for women, it's different. They want recognition of their talent and their skills. And there was a survey in Japanese female politicians about the harassment they receive in politics. And they found that they get twice as much general harassment as men, 10 times as much violent or sexual comments, and 30 times as much comments that focus on gender. But in response, the women politicians created a video to share with the male politicians about a young woman entering politics and the difficulties she perceived from these kind of negative comments. And the response from many of the older politicians was, I never realized it was that bad. We thought it wasn't so serious. The problem there is that men deal with these comments in a different way. They've been taught to shut down their emotions. They develop a thick skin. They don't communicate emotionally as much as women do, so they're not as vulnerable to this kind of negative issue.
So they perceive them differently.
Yeah, they think it's not as serious a problem as it is.
Yeah.
And when they realize it is a problem, then they recognize you need to do something about it. So, and for me, one issue with, as an academic looking at political issues, I often worry that politicians look for the quick answer because they have elections coming up. They need to build support. They need to show this is what I've done. And often deep changes take a decade. And for me, the key issue is this type of emotional communication, understanding the other side. We spend so much of our time in school, all of us I'm sure, studying algebra and geometry, and how often do we use that on a day-to-day basis? And we look at things like love, friendship, family, parenting, loss, death, addiction, loneliness, things that devastate our lives. How much time do we spend in school studying these issues, understanding how they're going to affect our futures, how they'll affect our family? Not so much perhaps. That kind of change would take 10 years maybe to have an impact, but an investment in that kind of emotional education, I think, would have huge dividends. That's what I think.
All right, so we have about 8 minutes left till 12:30, so I'd like to give it one more round to each of you, and let's try and split that time. About a minute each. One last message addressing this conference, talking about leadership, about enabling women to take more decision-making positions in our societies. What's your message? Final message?
Very difficult in 1 minute, but I think that short. We are working together with the other MPs to be together in the fight in a fight against domestic violence, in fight for empowering the women in politics, in fight for even some small initiatives that can change the real life of the women. And I think that if we will be together, if we will be more women in the room or at the table, if we will have the same legacy to work together, then I think that we can implement and we can strengthen our voice and our mission, what we want to do in politics and in leadership position. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was only 40 seconds. Excellent. Thank you.
I think I would do disservice to Western Balkans if I don't first and foremost thank them for putting together this conference. I know what it takes to bring people together, especially people from multiple countries. So thank you so much for your hard work for putting this together and for bringing diverse voices into the table. Thank you to the partners for making possible the work of Western Balkans in terms of delivering this impact. And for me, I think the only message for conferences of this time, but also for our realities, it goes with this African proverb that says, strangers are just the friends you haven't met. So don't be shy, go out there and meet one another, share stories, and find ways to build bridges, because I think they are the true connectors, but they are also a bit of food for our heart. Our mind sometimes dictates something else, because it's always a go ahead, move forward, but builds a bit of nutrition for heart, because we also need to bring them, just like my colleague here said, sometimes it's good to stop and just pause for a moment and reflect. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Deputy Minister Staki.
Really, thank you. I would like to thank Western Balkans Fund, NFA of Japan, and International Visegrad Fund for organizing this conference and enabling us to share some of our views. I would like to say to all the women that they are fully supported to participate by having access to all opportunities and resources. And in conclusion, I would like to end with a timeless quote from U.S. President John F. Kennedy, who once said, "It's time for a new generation of leadership to cope with new problems and new opportunities, for there is a new world to be won." Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mrs. Babs.
Thank you very much for this invitation and the possibility to be here and to share with you all the experiences, opinions. I would say at the end that we cannot have a better future without having a large spectrum of visions and perspective. And this can be only possible if we have enough women and women vision, which is very often different than men. And only in this case we will have fair governance of our countries, and our interests would be respected. Coming back to my role of the Deputy Executive Director of the Visegrad Fund, I invited you once more time to consult our website, visegradfund.org, to study our grant line, and I invite you strongly to apply and to meet on Visegrad's path again. Thank you.
It's a bit difficult to say anything more than what we heard already, but again, from my experience in working with survivors, I can say that what I thought was to put myself into other people's shoes. So I think that if we do that and try to really reflect from other people's perspective, that we would gain a lot of things, not better understand and reflect other people and their needs, but also ourselves. And it can really contribute a lot to our personal growth and also to our lives, decisions and actions.
Excellent. Thank you. This is Jovanovich.
because again, I fully concur with all said. So to have more leaders, or at least more equality and more female leaders stand out, we argue for technical programs to be provided as support to them to do so. An example is the law on cadastre that we changed in 2019 in Serbia to improve the position of married women, meaning that married couples, when buying a piece of property together, from that point on, it's entered into both their names as joint property. Prior to that, women had to go through a nightmare in getting divorced to prove that they had a role in getting this piece of property, that they invested in it, even if they didn't work, they didn't have a loan taken care of. So we need this kind of programs that will be the backbone of female equality and leadership. And we need such programs in politics as well to support female leaders in city councils, leaders being heads of offices or agencies, they're being number 2 all the time and never getting to the top position. So we need to grow them stronger. And we need equally such programs in the area of parenting, so that there are joint parenthood programs and campaigns so that mothers, working mothers, can be relieved of all family duties that are usually considered their burden and role. And we need institutions like kindergarten, schools, support institutions that will be available and at a cost that is affordable, so that women can, again, have more time to work on what they want to be and how they want to grow. And most importantly, from our perspective, the same applies in the area of economy, so we need more economic programs to support them. Public procurement that is gender sensitive, that is also taking into account women-owned businesses, interest-free loans, economic programs with part-time employment for rural women. So these kind of tangible programs as support for all those that have the potential, that don't have a voice, so they rely on us to speak for them and to make it happen. And I hope you will. Thank you.
I would just like to highlight again the importance of reaching out to all parts of society to try and build consensus. And that applies as well to people who might be hostile to your ideas, to people who might reject them, to people who might display anger towards them. Because if they're doing that, these are not happy people. These are people who have emotional problems, there's difficulties. And by engaging with you, they can probably become better if you can overcome those barriers. And when we talk about removing barriers, it's not just barriers for women to advance, it's barriers in society that women can help bring down. And I thought that's something that we can really do.
Well, thank you for this round of applause for our entire panel. Thank you very much for all your thoughts and experiences shared with us. Next is a meetup session happening right here, and it's going to be facilitated by Elvira Joni, Karstina Ayeti, Tanya Tomic, and Amra Smrikl as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice day forward in the conference. Thanks.
好，告诉你。